Hey guys, it's Brodgi. You know what series I love even though it is constantly disappointing me release after release? Sonic the Hedgehog. Everybody knows about the blue blur and how his recent mainline titles just haven't been doing so hot lately, but I'm not here to talk to you about that mess. I'm here to tell you about some of the spin-offs Sonic was crammed into. Spin-offs are games in a series that differ in gameplay or focus on a different aspect of the story not focused on in mainline games. Some spin-offs make complete sense within the series, but some are a bit more out there. Some of the more well-known spin-offs are Mario Kart, Paper Mario, Metroid Prime, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, and one of the more recent and popular ones, Apex Legends. Now, Sonic isn't one to shy away from a spin-off himself. In fact, he has been in many spin-off games, many going from masterpieces to dumpster fires. One of the more popular Sonic spin-off series is the Sonic and All-Stars Racing series. These games were made as Mario Kart clones, which is not a bad thing. This is extremely obvious in the first game, with many items just being bland copies of classic Mario Kart items like the traffic cone being the banana peel, the red rocket being the red shell, and the green glove being the green shell. The game's main gameplay focus is drifting to cut corners and gain speed, which is very fun, but once mastered can make the game fairly easy. One of the things that make this game special though is the fan service. As said in the title, this game doesn't just feature Sonic characters, it features many other Sega franchises like Super Monkey Ball, House of the Dead, Space Channel 5, and many others. The stages are also based on different Sega franchises, which gives many stages a distinct style. The problem is that once you master drifting, the game becomes fairly easy, and the stages become less special because of this. But where this game fumbles, its sequel, Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed, really picks up the slack. As the name suggests, this game is no longer just Sega characters. Some aren't even video game characters. The roster has new additions like TF2, Wreck-It Ralph, Danica Patrick. Of course, the original roster from the game and a few new other Sega fan favorites have been added as well. The game has had a huge overhaul on its items. While some are still very similar to Mario Kart items, many are completely new and original, adding a sense of craziness and unpredictability, which kart racers are known for. Another huge addition is the transformation mechanic that the game is named after. Many think this was just a copy of Mario Kart 8's glider and underwater sections because they released around the same time, but this is far from true. The transformation mechanic allows for much more interesting and memorable stage designs, not to mention that the flying and boat driving feel just as good, if not better, than the normal driving in the game. This makes you excited to get to the boat and flying sections because they control well and they are very fun and challenging. The game also has the World Tour mode, which has so much to do in it, from traditional races to the many different challenges that the game throws at you. There are many different challenges in the game, like the Ring Challenge, where you have to try and drive through all of the rings in a certain time, the Boost Challenge, where you have to try and keep boosting the entire time while making it through a specific amount of checkpoints, and lots more. The challenges and races can be very difficult if played on the highest difficulty, causing the game to be very challenging, and it will last you for a while. With all of these things considered, this is one of my favorite racing games of all time, and I hope that this sets a pattern for the quality of the next few games we will be going over. Another spin-off series is the Sonic Storybook series of games. These games were made to give the Wii some Sonic titles to call its own, since it couldn't handle most of the modern gen games at the time. The first in this series was Sonic and the Secret Rings. This game was made at the same time as Sonic 06 was being made. This caused them to split the Sonic team in half to develop both games, which may explain some certain issues with a certain game. Now, to start off, the story, while not complex, is a very fun idea for the Sonic franchise. Stick him in the Arabian Nights stories and fight an evil genie. The main plot of this game is an evil genie named Eraser Jin, who sounds weirdly like Adam West.
You filthy rat!
Batman
Has taken over the Arabian Nights stories and wants to rewrite them using the power of the 7 Chaos Emerald World Rings. So your goal is to collect all of the world rings before the genie can. On your way to find these rings, you go through several different locations based on Arabian Nights stories. The level themings are easily the most fun and creative part of this game, and even though they were working with much weaker hardware than what was available at the time, they were still able to make the locations in this game look really pretty. You can go from a jungle filled with dinosaurs, to ruins floating in the sky, to a pirate ship filled ocean, and a few other locations. While some are admittedly much less creative than others, they still fit well within the theming of the game and can be memorable in their own way. But just because the levels look nice doesn't mean they play nice, so what are the level designs like? I think that the levels are designed fairly well, and lend themselves well to the usual Sonic design of trying to get better scores and times every time you play. But I've left out one key detail of this game that makes almost all of the good things obsolete once you experience it: the motion controls. This game was made early in the Wii's lifespan, and as such tried to hop on the motion control train as fast as it could. The problems come from the fact that since this game came out so early in the Wii's lifespan, most third-party developers have not fully figured out how to import motion controls in their game, causing them to sometimes be finicky and unresponsive. This wouldn't be a big deal if the motion controls were just used for small extra challenges or minigames, but no. The entire game is controlled with motion controls. The only button you will be pressing the entire game is the jump button, because besides that, you have to swing the Wii remote around like a maniac to do basic platforming. So if you want to do a homing attack on an enemy, you better start wagging that Wii remote around and hope that it even registers it. And also, the game is structured in this weird way that Sonic is always moving forward unless you specifically tell him not to, which is done by tilting the Wiimote towards you, which it does not pick up half the time, making it very frustrating when the game clearly requires you to go backwards at certain points to hit switches or to get something that you missed. This also brings up a big problem with the levels. You know how I said earlier that the levels are well designed? Well, I still stand by that, at least for the first mission of each world, because those are the only normal levels you are going to get. After that, you just do a bunch of annoying, tedious challenges that just reuse the same level segments over and over again. And they didn't even have the courtesy to give you a few music tracks per world. No, no, no. You have to listen to the same song every single mission. Which is not bad at first because the soundtrack is really good. But you listen to the same song for more than an hour, it starts to take a toll on your brain. One of the worst experiences I've had with this game is when I was stuck in the Dino Jungle missions for a while, since I was still getting used to the controls, and I had to listen to the Dino Jungle theme, which just repeats the words Dino, It's a Jungle, and Wicked Wild for the entire song. And for what after felt like an eternity of hearing it, I started to feel like I was going a little crazy. The later I got into the game, I will admit, I got used to the weird controls and started to have a little more fun with it, but still found myself frustrated and wanting to be done for the most part. But I finally made it through the missions and motion controls. I had finally made it to the final boss. This boss actually looks really cool, and Darkspine Sonic is probably the best super form we have gotten in the whole series. But then the actual fight started, and you had to constantly shake the Wiimote up and down to gather energy while dodging attacks. After quite a few tries, my arms were worn out and I just quit. I really wanted to enjoy this game because I could really see the good parts and wanted more of it, but my main problem was the motion controls because they just turned the entire game into a slog. I'm hoping maybe the next game in the series fixes some of these issues because I think there's something really good buried beneath all the problems. After Sonic and the Secret Rings sold 2.75 million copies, Sega decided that it might be a good idea to make another one. Sonic and the Black Knight is when Sega officially called this series the Storybook series, and a third one based on Greek mythology was planned, but it was later cancelled after the low reception of the first two. As far as story goes, Black Knight is pretty similar to Secret Rings. Sonic gets thrown into the world of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, except King Arthur has become evil and must be defeated before he destroys the entire kingdom. Now, I would warn you that there are about to be spoilers, but something tells me that nobody cares about a story of a 12-year-old Sonic game for the Wii. So, after you defeat King Arthur later in the game, it turns out that he was an illusion the whole time, and the true villain of the game is Marina, the girl who summoned Sonic here, who plans on making an everlasting kingdom. Sonic then tells her that everlasting life is lame, and the final boss happens. The final boss is kind of like the final boss for the first game. Looks cool, but not really that fun to play. Now, of course, before you get to that point, there is an entire game you have to play. So how good is it? I'll start out with the level design, because I would say it's about as good as the first game. The level theming is good and matches really well with the storybook tone, and overall design of the levels work really well with some of the new mechanics introduced in the game, which, before we move on, we probably need to talk about. The main gimmick of this game is the fact that Sonic is wielding a sword. This may sound like a bad thing, but it actually improves the gameplay over the first game. Instead of motion controls being used for all of the movement, they are just used to do attacks with your sword. Sonic is now controlled with a Wiimote and nunchuck, giving him a much more traditional control scheme and making the game much easier to control and deal with. Because the controls feel a lot better, in turn, the missions do as well. For the most part, the game has the same mission structure as Secret Rings, but there are a lot less of them, and they are more diverse and less tedious. This is mostly because of the new controls, which make everything in the game much easier and less frustrating. You also unlock more characters later on, but they don't really add much to the game as a whole, because their gameplay is not that different. Overall, Sonic and the Black Knight made some huge improvements from Secret Rings, but really isn't anything that special when compared to other Sonic games. I think they were really close to making a good Sonic series with these games, but it was just really small things like motion controls and repetitive missions that really held these games back. One other game I wanted to talk about is Sonic Boom Fire and Ice. I decided not to include the first two Sonic Boom games, mainly because everyone knows the story behind Rise of Lyric and how much of a failure that game is, but also because I am one of the many lucky souls to not own the game. Even though the original was a failure, Sanzaru Games decided to give it another shot by making a game similar to the original portable version of Sonic Boom. This was a very strange decision, as both of the Sonic Boom games combined only sold 620,000 copies, making it the lowest selling in the entire franchise because of the many bugs and performance issues, boring gameplay, and the fact that the series launched on a failing console. But nevertheless, a sequel was made for 3DS called Sonic Boom Fire and Ice. The story isn't anything special, just the usual Sonic and Gang vs. Eggman that we've been getting for the past 30 years. Eggman finds a new element, which causes bad things to happen to the environment. Sonic and Gang go to stop the fissures caused by the new element, Ragnium. While investigating, Sonic and Amy get Fire and Ice powers, because. The powers are then sent wirelessly to the rest of the group. As you can see, this is the best video game plot since Death Stranding. Now, of course, this Oscar-winning plot doesn't matter if the gameplay isn't good, and I've got to say, it isn't too bad. Instead of building up momentum or boosting like most Sonic games, you go faster by pressing the RUD button, which is an odd decision for a Sonic game, but within the context of these levels, it doesn't feel too bad. Another addition is the ability to switch between the characters of Sonic, Amy, Tails, Knuckles, and Styx. Each have their own abilities by pressing the X button, which allows you to access new parts of the level that usually allow you to access the game's collectibles. Speaking of collectibles, I have to say, I have never been less motivated to collect things in my life. Most of the collectibles aren't that fun to search for, and once you get them, really don't unlock anything of value. You can use the Ragnium you unlock to unlock new robots for the robot racing mode, which is fun, but feels more like a distraction than anything of substance. And from what I can tell, the new robots don't really improve your racing, so it's more of a cosmetic thing than anything truly useful. Gladly though, unlike in Shattered Crystal, the collectibles aren't required to progress unless you want to 100% complete the game, if that makes you feel better for spending $20 on a mediocre Sonic spin-off. Now, as the game suggests, the main gimmick of this game is being able to switch from fire and ice abilities, which allow you to freeze/melt ice and water blocks. This seems like a very simple addition, but can be fun mixed with other level design elements, causing you to have to think about multiple things at once very fast, which makes the level design more fun in my opinion, and makes it harder to try and keep that sense of speed you get when you're able to go as fast as you can without being stopped by the different obstacles thrown at you. The boss fights aren't anything special, but are one of the few parts of the game that use both screens, which is cool, I guess. Most of the world and level themes are very bland and boring, causing most of them to blend together, and I couldn't tell you which levels are from which worlds. Overall, this game has some fun ideas and level designs to keep me entertained through my whole playthrough, but suffers from bland theming, boring and useless collectibles, and barely any replayability, which I think is very important for any Sonic game, spin-off or not. This game isn't anything special, but if you have nothing better to do or just want a new Sonic game to play, this isn't your worst option and can be fairly fun during its very short playtime. The last game I'm talking about is an interesting one. It is a Sonic RPG developed by BioWare, the guys who made Mass Effect, and has extremely good reviews from critics. So how is the game? I don't like it. The game's story is okay, but ultimately just doesn't matter when the rest of the game fumbles so hard on basic things like battling in the overworld. The only part of this story I found interesting, and probably for the wrong reasons, is that in the beginning of the game it tries to make you think that Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles killed Eggman. Of course, they later reveal that he was alive the whole time, which is kinda lame. Another interesting thing is that you can choose different dialogue options for Sonic and even make him a complete jerk, which sounds interesting at first, but it has no bearing on the plot of the game and just ends up making the dialogue portions longer than they already are. Now on to the best part of the game, the soundtrack. Now before we start listening, I should warn you, this soundtrack has been called the second coming of Donda for how good it is. Let's listen to some of my personal favorites. Number 1, Angel Island. Number 2, Metropolis. Number 3, Central City. Now, this one is probably the best song ever, so be ready. This soundtrack is probably made by the Beatles because of how good it is. Now, another very important part of the game would be its presentation. Now, since this game is exclusive to the DS, I didn't really go in expecting much, but the overall game just does not look appealing at all. Instead of going for a primarily 2D or 3D art style, they decided to go for 3D models on top of 2D artwork, which just looks really unnatural because it is sometimes hard to tell which parts of the overworld are higher up than other parts, making it hard to navigate. Also, since the entire world is 2D artwork, sometimes the collision boxes are a little off, making it look like the characters are standing on top of higher places than they should. I honestly think they should have just either stuck the 2D sprites or 3D models, because the meshing of them together in this game just looks really bad. I almost feel like they should have gone for a more Mario and Luigi style, where it is all just really well done sprite work that fits together easily. Another big problem with this game is the fact that the entire game is controlled with the stylus. Like, I did not press a single button the entire game. When traversing the world, you drag the character around with a stylus, which just feels very weird, especially since it's somewhat delayed, making it frustrating to move around. And when you have to do anything like jump, run faster, climb, or fly, instead of assigning a button to those actions, instead you have to click on these little prompts that pop up when you get near an area you have to perform in the action. This makes you completely stop, which makes traversing the areas of this game much slower and more boring. Now on to the main part of the game, the combat. Since this game is more of a traditional RPG, most of the battling is just turn-based combat. But they tried to give it a twist, kind of like the Mario and Luigi series, but instead of simple button commands that almost make you feel like you are the one attacking, they make you play like a little miniature game of Osu. Every time you do a special attack, these special attacks also cost you most of your power points, so if you don't want to use them more than one per character in a battle, you better stock up on items. There are also enemy attacks that you dodge by performing the same type of input command as the special attacks, but these attacks are very easy to dodge and pretty forgiving if you mess up. But the attacks that do the most damage are the ones that you can't dodge, making it very frustrating when one character gets singled out by a bunch of high damaging, undodgeable attacks. Another strange thing about the combat is that instead of just picking one move during a turn, you are also picking 2 or 3 turns ahead, making it very hard to strategize or plan out your attacks at all. On top of all of this, the locations you visit really aren't that interesting either. Most of them are just locations from old Sonic games, somehow made less interesting than they were before, like how they somehow made Green Hill Zone less interesting than it is in Sonic Forces. Overall, this game both fails as an RPG and a Sonic game, giving the game no true appeal. The game can't even get the soundtrack right, which is something Sonic games almost never do wrong. All of these factors just make this game a boring mess that Nintendo Life gave an 8 out of 10 for some strange reason. As you can see from all of the games we've played today, the Sonic franchise is a very good and consistent franchise. If only we could see her take wing.